Hi and welcome to yet another episode of Python Bonanza. I'm Joachim, and today we will talk about comprehensions and what they are. Yes, comprehensions is something that will pop up rather quickly when you get into the world of Python, because it's something that we use quite a lot and in a number of different situations. So it is really something that you would need to understand because it's really powerful. So I was not really surprised when I got this question from Sasha that asked, I cannot really get my head around comprehensions. Can you please help me and explain what they are and when I should use them? So this is what we will do here today. We will both look at what they are and actually what they will replace, because we can actually live without comprehensions. We can do something without comprehensions, or anything without comprehensions, but that will require more code. So this is a compact way of doing something. And what we are, the situation where we want to use them is when we have some sort of a sequence. This sequence can be anything. It can be a list, it could be a string, or anything you can iterate over. And with iterate over, I mean you can use it in a for loop, for example. So we want to use that as an input, and then we want to usually do some sort of transformation. So we will produce a new sequence. So we have one sequence as an input and we will produce a new sequence as an output. And usually if we're not doing any transformation, we will just copy the sequence. So usually we would like to do some sort of transformation on this before we get the new sequence. So what we will do now is that first we will take a look at how the code would look, or what the code will look like without comprehension, and then we'll do the same thing with comprehension, and then we will take a look at some of the parts of a comprehension. So let's move over to the editor and have a look. So the first thing we would need is some sort of sequence to use as our input. So I will use a list of numbers. So let's just have 4 numbers. And then we wanted the result to be another sequence. And in this case, I will create another list. So this will be the list that will hold the result, the output of this transformation that we will do. So I call it result list. And here initially I will just assign it an empty list, because what we're going to do now is we're going to iterate on the first list on numbers. So we do a normal for loop, so we call it for value in numbers, and then we will do transformation and append it to the result list. So we have result list, append, and then we do the transformation here. So we have in value here, we will have 1 the first time, 2 the second time, and so on. So whatever we have there, let's just say we multiply it by 2, just to have some sort of transformation. And then at the end here, we can print the result list. So if we run that, we will see that we get the transformed result here. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, and so on. Now this is all well, but what we can do here now is we can actually replace these 3 lines with a single line. So that is what the comprehension is. And actually we can pick some of the parts that we already have here to accomplish this. So first we have the result list here. This is where we want to store the result. And after the assignment operator here, we have the square brackets that indicates that we want a list. So we still want a list, but what we want to do is we're going to actually take this for loop and move it into the square brackets. So let's do that like that. So that is the first sign that we are dealing with a comprehension. When you have, for example, square brackets indicating a list and you have a for loop inside it, that is what will make this a comprehension. But then we need to do this transformation as well. And that one goes before the for loop in here, like that. And this is actually exactly the same code here. So we can remove what we had there. So we have the for loop. So we iterate over each of the numbers and get a value. And then over here, we take that value, multiply it by 2, and that will go into the resulting list. So if we run this again, we'll see that we get exactly the same result. Now, I am using PyCharm here, and one thing PyCharm has is if I have a comprehension like this, I have this option here to convert the list comprehension to a for loop. So let's click that and see what I got. And as you can see, I got exactly the same thing we had before, showing that this is exactly the same thing. So typically, when you have something like this, you have an input sequence. That is a sequence you're going to work on, and these values will be the input. And then you want to store the result in another sequence, and this is typical. You create an empty sequence here, you iterate over the first sequence, and then you do some sort of transformation and store it in the second sequence. That is where you would like to have a comprehension instead, like this. So we do also have another part of a comprehension. So if we go back to where we had this, it might be so that I would like to have some sort of if statement here. So let's say I would like to check, I only want to have even numbers from the input. And to check if a number is even, I would say value modulus 2 equals 0. So that will only be true for an even number. So in our input sequence, this will only be true for 2 and 4. And if I indent this one now and run it, we will see that we only get 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. And we can actually do the same thing here with a comprehension. So again, if I take the for loop and put it inside square brackets, I take the transformation and put it where it was in front of the for loop, there. Then I can actually have what I usually like to call the filter part. And that goes after the for loop here. Like that. Now I can remove all that. And now we have the iteration in the middle here. And then for each value, it goes over to this filter section here. And if this passes this check, if it passes the filter, if this is true, then the value goes over to what we can see as a goal area or something like that. It's a target area. And everything that ends up here will go into the resulting list. But everything that doesn't pass this filter here will just be ignored in this case. So let's run this and see that we get the same result again. Now, this was just some of the basics of a comprehension, but actually it's not much more to it than this. There are some more advanced stuff we can do with comprehensions. We can have, for example, we can have a number of for loops here. We can also, instead of having one if statement, have an if else statement. In that case, the if else goes in front of the loop here. But that is more advanced techniques that we can use together with list comprehensions. So the most important thing to understand with them and start to use them is that we have this input sequence that we want to transform into new sequence. That is when we use comprehensions, and they are powerful and they are easy to read and understand once you get them. So experiment with them and use them, because they are very powerful. So that was all for today, and if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any content, and I will see you again next week. And if you do have a question, post it to the email address shown on the screen now. It is also in the description of the video. So I'm looking forward for new interesting Python questions to work with, and that will make us understand Python better. So see you again next week. Bye.